The radio show Earth will begin in 1 minute. The radio show Earth will begin in 30 seconds. Hello and welcome to Earth. I trust you have left your preconceived notions, prejudices, and disbelief when you set foot on this, the most controversial planet in the solar system. Good, because now you will have to be receptive to new concepts, alternate takes on history, and even have your perception of reality challenged at its very core. But don't be afraid. Think of it as an opportunity to free your mind from the communal thought that has influenced you ever since before you were aware of what was going on in the world. Today's date is April 25th, 2015, and here are some of the things you might have missed. News taken from the back pages and underneath the shadows of the headlines, hidden in plain sight since your last visit to Earth. A common thread between certain science fiction movies, such as Alien, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Interstellar, is that they all employ the method of cryosleep, or suspended animation, to enable a ship's crew to survive long-duration flights in space. But many sci-fi concepts and technology have a way of becoming reality, and this may be one of them. NASA has recently teamed up with SpaceWorks Enterprises to explore the feasibility of putting astronauts to sleep for long voyages, therefore making missions to Mars and beyond more attainable. Scientists believe that using a form of hibernation called torpor, or short-term hibernation, which exists naturally among a number of mammalian species, could be the answer to problems like carrying consumables sufficient to support a human crew to and from the Red Planet. The researchers based their methodology on the use of induced hypothermia in certain medical situations, which lowers body temperature, blood pressure, and respiration. Crew members in the hypothermic state would travel inside a special chamber, hooked up with sensors and fed nutrition intravenously. They would be in this state for 14 days at a time, with crew members taking turns being awake to ensure the needs of their fellow astronauts and the ship are met during the journey. SpaceWorks says that a ship operating in this fashion would reduce consumables and other weight penalties to support the same-sized crew by more than half. Sounds enticing, but the process of induced hypothermia has only been used in critical patient care and not on healthy subjects. More research and testing is said to be on the horizon. And another case of science fiction becoming closer to reality, and this time it's not in a good way. News broke this week that a team of Chinese scientists have successfully edited the genes of human embryos for the first time ever, despite calls to stop these ethically questionable experiments. The technology still has a way to go before entirely genetically engineered babies can be made, but researchers fear that before too long that might be possible, perhaps along the lines of the scenario from the sci-fi movie Gattaca. In the film, designer babies became routine, and the genetically inferior are regarded as second-class citizens. Scientists urge for stricter guidelines and regulations for human genetic engineering, and although many countries have laws in place, a few, like China, have rules which are not legally binding, allowing some experiments to continue. We'll have more news later, but next, it's an honor to have such a great investigative journalist and author back to the program tonight, Jim Marrs. His books should be on everyone's list for knowledge and insight into the agenda and conspiracies of the global elite. We'll cover everything from the plot that killed JFK to the Dzhokhar Tsarnaev trial and everything in between, along with your calls. For the next 2 hours, we pull back the web of deceit with Dr. Drake, Dr. Truth, Jim Marrs, and you. This week on Earth.
The opinions provided by the hosts and guests on the radio show Earth do not express or imply the views of this station's management or that of the ownership of this station. In fact, it's just two guys lost in space.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Will?
We want your soul.
It really is a time when all of us have got to start talking louder than ever. The rapid speed of, if you like, globalization for world government, world army, world central bank, world currency, world microchip population.
Don't be afraid.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
The important thing is to know where they want to take us.
They have to destroy the dollar, destroy the pound, destroy the old order while they've been building the new world order, this technological enslavement system.
The FBI is taking on $1 billion project to gather fingerprints, palm patterns, even digital pictures of faces. Eventually, it could expand to include iris patterns, face shape patterns, scars, even information about how you walk and talk. It's called biometrics.
We want your soul.
You can't handle the truth.
Time to howl at the wolves. It's Saturday night, the 25th of April, 2015, or 2015. What did they say at the Bilderberg Group? As you like it. The good Dr. Drake is out tonight. He might be vacationing in his favorite spot, Juarez, Mexico. He likes dangerous spots. Sitting in Dr. Drake's chair tonight is one of our contributors, Double A, also known as Amendment Avenger. How are you?
Good to be here. Freedom is still your first best destiny.
One of our favorite guests, and really one of the most important guests any radio show can have on, is on with us tonight, joining us for this first hour. Second hour, open lines, toll-free 855-711-8255. But if you wish to speak with our guest tonight, we will take your phone calls in this first hour. He is an award-winning investigative journalist, best-selling author many times over, books such as Rule by Secrecy, Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy, and The Terror Conspiracy, for example. The Terror Conspiracy, 9/11, and the Loss of Liberty. Jim Marrs, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be with you folks. Mars to Earth. Mars to Earth.
We read you clearly.
Beam me up, Scotty. I guess you all have heard about the huge earthquake over in Nepal.
Yes, 7.8 magnitude.
7.8. That's getting on up there. I just checked. There's been 36 major quakes. That's a 5.5 or more just in the past 30 days. And, of course, I think we're all aware, or should be, that the Ring of Fire is gotten pretty active in recent years. So, there's just all kinds of things we have to watch out for, and never mind nuclear war or terrorists or asteroids from space. Now we got to worry about the Earth herself spitting us out.
We also, Jim, have to worry about the controlled media not letting us know about it.
Oh, listen, I've been in the media for more than 50 years, and I am still constantly shocked and surprised at how tightly controlled our so-called corporate media truly is. It's really incredible. I have written some in a new book that I have coming out in June that covers all kinds of stuff, everything from the questionable vaccines to questionable air and water and the militarization of the police, et cetera, et cetera. And it's always the one common theme is that it's always marginalized or not reported by the so-called news media. In fact, I used to kind of laugh and joke and say that you can get more truthful news off of some of these comedy shows and comedy movies than you do off the news, but it's become so true that it's hardly funny anymore.
Well, that's true. Comedy, it's been said that comedy is the last refuge of truth, and that's what it's looking like. I do see a lot more powerful, hard-hitting, real questions coming out of reporters that are supposed to be comedians than actual journalists who call themselves real journalists.
That's true. And now, of course, we're here on the cusp of Jade Helm 15, this massive multi-state military exercise. And, of course, I was in the Army during Vietnam, and I understand about military exercises. Excuse me. They're always, diagramming some play just to stay sharp and try to be on top of things. So that's nothing new, but this one, Jade Helm, is involving the CIA, the FBI, and the special operations groups of the Marines, the Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and local police departments, and they're operating in the southern states, southwestern states, and in their materials, they have listed Texas and Utah as hostile states. So wait a minute, what's going on there?
There's too many patriots, Jim.
Yes.
I think so. You have to excuse me here. Just all of a sudden, I choked up. I think. I think we've got some pollen running around here.
Yeah, we had that seriously here in Florida a couple of months ago. Most people don't realize that Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution says that treason shall consist in levying war against the several states. So if you're levying war against the states, that's literally by definition in the Constitution, Article 3, Section 3, look it up, as treason. So
yeah. Well, and when they're practicing slipping people unnoticed into small towns and into rural areas, and they're using our troops, in our territory, there's really no conclusion to draw except for the fact that they're preparing for martial law. If they were practicing for combat in Iran or Uzbekistan or somewhere, they would be using territory and environments similar to that.
Well, 29 Palms, which is a Marine base, larger than the state of Rhode Island. So they have plenty of room to do their maneuvers.
Right, but as you're probably well aware, they've actually, I'm not sure if it's at that facility, but they have built basically a small American town with a church and a school and all this, and they practice raiding that place and dropping in helicopters and everything else. So what is that all about?
That's in Virginia. I think the one you're thinking about. Yes.
Jim, do you remember the exercise? This was either last year or the year before, where they had pop-up targets of pregnant women.
Right.
Remember that?
Little kids.
Right.
Yes.
Little granny ladies. Yeah.
That's...
Yeah, and I also, this is nothing new. Back in the 90s, I think, they practiced on a little small town in South Texas and just scared everybody to death because hardly anybody in town knew this was going to happen. The next thing I know, there was helicopters dropping in, and they were firing blanks and even some live fire at certain locations. In fact, they ended up accidentally setting a gas station on fire. And, it was just a whole deal. And now that caused a big outcry, okay? But then that was in the 90s. We hadn't heard any more about that, and here they come again. Here's the real clincher. Can you all go get on one of your computers, go to Google Images, and just call up the Jade Helm logo, okay? And what you'll see is crossed arrows, which also indicate weaponry that can go through the air, okay, aerial weaponry. And then this crossed over a sword, which traditionally has represented weapons, land-based weapons. But then right in the middle is this hazy little object, and I know that I looked at that for a long time and had no idea what it was. And it's almost like they spilled ink or spilled some white out or something there on the middle of it. But then when you really look at it, if you look closely, you'll find out that it is a wooden shoe.
I'm looking at it, and that's exactly what it looks like.
A wooden shoe. And why would they put a wooden shoe on these crossed weapon symbols in the Jade Helm exercise? And what does it sound to that? Mastering the human domain. In other words, mastering humans and humans' environment. And what has wooden shoes got to do with that? Well, as a student of the Third Reich, you might want to check out my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And in doing so, I had to do some extensive study of the Third Reich. When they picked up people and sent them to the concentration camps, if you were healthy and could work, they gave you striped pajamas to wear and wooden clog shoes. Okay? Number one, when you got those heavy wooden shoes on, you can't run. You can't get away from them.
Especially
and number
if it's
two,
muddy.
they would not give them socks. And so after working for several days in these rough wooden shoes, your feet would get irritated, and then they'd get infected, and then you'd die off all that much sooner. So in other words, the wooden shoe symbolizes concentration camps. Now, where have we heard about concentration camps today? Can you spell FEMA?
Oh, you mean the residency centers?
Yes. Detention centers.
I've heard them called residencies.
Some years ago, west of Mineral Wells, Texas, which is not too far from where I live, I heard that there was a FEMA facility, so I went to check it out. And sure enough, there's this old, weather-beaten old sign that was barely legible that said FEMA, and it was acres upon acres of mobile homes, just stacked one right next to another. And I thought, what's this? So I contacted FEMA, asked them about it, and they explained that these mobile homes were to be hauled into disaster areas and give temporary housing for people, after some terrible event like Katrina. And I went, okay, thank you. And then, but the more I thought about it, I thought, wait a minute. I've covered news for years, and I've gone to all kinds of disasters, floods, and tornadoes. And I said, I don't remember ever seeing long strings of trailer homes being brought in by FEMA or anybody else. So I called a source of mine in the National Guard. He was a colonel. And he said, you don't understand. He said, that facility is to warehouse dissidents in the event of a national emergency. I said, well, no, wait a minute. If you're just going to detain people who you think might cause trouble during some national emergency, I said, why don't you just put up a tent city, or you could build those wooden barracks like they did in World War II? And he said, no, you don't understand. These are for families. So in other words, they got plans to haul whole families out of the cities and put them in these camps.
Jim, do you remember? It must have been. Let's see. It must have been at least 2010 or 2011. I think it was Congressman Cohen. I forget, but it was section. The bill was 646 or something like that. I'm messing the numbers up. But he was interviewed by Jesse Ventura when Jesse had that TV show going on, and Jesse put him on the spot while he's denying that FEMA camps exist. And then Jesse says, well, here's the bill that you co-signed for FEMA camps, allocating, tons of money to Halliburton to build them. Do you remember that?
Yeah, sure do. And so, that's another thing. Sometimes they actually try to tell us what's going on, but again, when when the government says no and the media is controlled, you don't hear it again. You go, well, I guess somebody must have been mistaken. And by the way, I understand. I may not be right on this, but I understand that FEMA camp episode that Jesse Ventura did has been pulled. You don't get to see that much.
That was pulled, and I kid you not, Jim. I used to live.
There's two of them. The TSA one was pulled too.
Well, also the JFK one was pulled.
Oh, really?
And I used to live outside of Jacksonville, Jim, in a log home that my stepfather and I built together. It was way outside of Jacksonville. Long drive every day to come in here for 3 years to do the show. But we had a satellite, and we had one of those boxes that record a DVR recorder. And I was recording all those shows, and sure enough, they disappeared off of that. I didn't erase them.
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Who was it? Oh, no, it wasn't Rush Limbaugh. Who's the other one?
Hannity?
No.
Oh, Bill O'Reilly you're talking about?
Might have been O'Reilly.
Or Glenn Beck.
Glenn Beck. Thank you. I had a Alzheimer moment there. Glenn Beck. If you'll remember, he started getting a lot of comments from people wanting to know about these FEMA camps. And initially he was kind of going, oh, no, it's nothing of that, folks. It's just conspiracy theory, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden, though, apparently he started actually looking into it. And the next thing we know, on one day, he said, we have the proof of the FEMA camps. And he said, tomorrow we'll present the whole story about the existence of these FEMA camps. But then when the listeners tuned in on that day, nothing happened. It went away. Obviously, somebody put the pressure to him.
This is what happens so much. You know what? This is what happens so much. Folks, your chance this first hour, if you'd like to talk with Jim Marrs, we'll entertain phone calls for Jim Marrs. He's on with us for this first hour, toll-free 855-711-8255 if you have a question for Jim Marrs. Jim, it's always just a treasure to talk with you, and I hope we're one of the shows that get to interview you when your new book comes out in June.
Sure. I think you want to. I think that the title is Population Control, but I think what it's really all about is summed up in the subtitle, which says how corporate owners are killing us.
Wow.
And folks, this is my point. If this was some academic, political, philosophical discussion, that's one thing. We could go back and forth and argue this and argue that and maybe this and what if that. But folks, it's beginning to be an issue of self-defense. They want you dead, and they're working on it pretty hard, and you better start becoming aware of what's truly going on and how it truly works, because this is no longer just a political discussion. This is self-defense.
Wow. Those targets that Truth talked about earlier, they're called DNH, the Delta November Hotel, the letters DNH, which stands for Do Not Hesitate. So if you want to Google, or I recommend Start Page, search for the DNH, Do Not Hesitate targets, and you see the pregnant women and the children and all that. And all I have to say is, if you're in the government or anyone, and you feel the need to shoot a pregnant woman, or if she feels the need to shoot you, you're messing up.
Yep.
Regardless.
Exactly.
You're messing up.
Now, do you all realize one of the reasons for the sudden overzealousness, if not aggressiveness, of some of the police departments and some of the ever-growing police shootings? Okay, it's because starting with Benjamin Chartoff, when he's now the mayor of Chicago, but back after 9/11, he was made head of the newly created Homeland Security Department. And
dual citizenship, Jim.
Huh?
He has dual citizenship.
That's the point. He's got dual citizenship, United States and Israel. And since then, he initiated this. And since then, a lot of officials with police departments in this country have been trained by Israelis. They have gone to Israel for training, for anti-terrorist training, and they have brought Israelis over here to train our police. Well, now, where you've got Israel, where you've got centuries of warfare and ethnic and family and tribal, and religious animosities and conflicts with people trying to kill each other day after day, that's a whole different set of circumstances than a country like the United States that's supposed to be, all United States citizens. Now, do you understand why our police is, number one, being militarized by the Pentagon that's sending out all these MRAPs and personnel carriers, machine guns, mortars, military fighting equipment to these police departments, and then they're being trained in aggressive anti-terrorist tactics that the Israelis use.
Jim, the Pittsburgh Police Department is on record going over there and doing that. I have a question for you. Have you heard of the Grayson Amendment?
Refresh my memory.
The Grayson Amendment was drafted by a representative from the Orlando area in Florida called, his name was Grayson, and it had to deal with, it was Amendment number 918 to a defense bill that happened last year, which happened a couple of weeks before Ferguson. Actually, it was in June, I think. It said that it was designed to restrict and deny access of the police to have chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons. And what happened was Congress shot it down to 355 to 62. So in shooting down the Grayson Amendment, 355 to 62, they approve for local police forces to have access to chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons.
That's exactly true. In fact, there are several school districts in South Texas, in the Houston area, that have now contracted with private security firms and have been getting these military, AR-15 rifles, M16s, grenade launchers for a school district. I mean, are we just going crazy or what?
I'm going to throw a bomb out here. There's evidence to support that the full militarization under the Project 1033, that not all of those arms are getting to the sheriffs that they say they are, and sheriffs,
they're not.
Sheriffs
and a lot
are
of them
concerned
that go out
about
to
that.
The sheriffs, they kind of count for them.
Sheriffs,
and there's a pretty good argument that some of them are ended up on the black market.
Exactly.
In fact, that's what's going everywhere. I mean, anybody, if you pay attention, if you really quit listening to TV and quit listening to the corporate major media and really keep your eyes open and listen to BBC and listen to foreign things, listen to alternative media. We have the best enemies that money can buy. All our enemies that we have fought, we have created, and this goes all the way back to the Nazis, the German Nazis. Hitler and the German Nazis never could have come to power if it had not been for money and support that came to them through Wall Street and the City of London. In fact, actually, you can go back to the Russian Revolution of 1918, and you find that Woodrow Wilson, our president, wrote and said the bulk of the money that went from America went to the Bolsheviks in Russia, not to the White Russians, the Kerensky government. So, in other words, we created communists, and then we got upset because they were trying to overrun the world. And so then they sent their money to Germany and created Nazi Germany, National Socialism, to act as a block against the spread of international socialist communism, okay? And then Hitler got out of hand, and his biggest sin, other than just everything that we know about, is the fact that he declined to borrow money from the international bankers. Instead, he printed his own Reichmarks and rebuilt Germany, by putting everybody back to work, dragging them out of the Depression, built the Autobahn, and built up his military. But he didn't do it with borrowed money. He created his own money, and Germany became the economic powerhouse of the world. And as Winston Churchill said, it had to be stopped, okay, because it was threatening the bankers of the West who had created them all in the first place. And by the way, there's only been 2 United States presidents who have attempted to issue their own money and bypass the international bankers who loan us money and then charge us a lot of interest for it, which is the national debt. And that was Abraham Lincoln, who printed up greenbacks to finance the war between the states. And then in June of 1963, John F. Kennedy, who issued $4.2 billion in treasury notes backed by silver. And
Jim, hold on right there, Jimmy. Hello, Earth fans. It's finally here. On Friday, April 17th, the new EarthRadioNetwork.com website will be launched. There you can find free audio archives, videos, interviews, and photos, and much, much more. But the superstar is Earth Live. Click on Earth Live and sample the Earth Live experience. Become an Earth Live subscriber and watch the show live in studio or from the archives. The new EarthRadioNetwork.com. The launch date is on Friday, April 17th.
Hello, this is Ty Bollinger, author of the best-selling book, Cancer, Step Outside the Box. I want you to know some very important information. In 1985, President Ronald Reagan requested that Carnivora be sent directly to the White House at a time when only the president could obtain this world-class healer. Now, 27 years later, Carnivora capsules are used around the world to keep people healthy. Now you can protect yourself and your loved ones in this age of superbugs with 17 naturally occurring compounds that instinctively respond to abnormal cells only without harming a single normal cell. If you want to stay healthy, now's your chance to literally wake up your critical immune cells to attack harmful invaders that don't belong in your body. Call 1-866-VENUS-FLY or order from Carnivora.com. That's Carnivora.com. That's 1-866-836-8735, 1-866-VENUS-FLY, or visit Carnivora.com. Protect your immune system. It's the only one you've got.
Chuck Bergman, psychic medium, will amaze you.
Any reason for me to see in a Rubik's Cube?
Oh, it's possible. That would have to do with my brother.
Why would you choose that?
My brother does the Rubik's Cube, and he solved it a few times. He kind of had them around his house.
If you have ever wanted to communicate with a loved one who has passed on, call on North Florida's best medium, Chuck Bergman.
There must be a reason why your brother that passed keeps talking about a cyclone.
Oh, my God, I'm going to cry. My brother,
yeah,
a cyclone, picked him up and threw him like 150 feet.
Are you serious?
And that's true. That was the reason for him dying so young, is
wow.
because of that cyclone.
Book your private reading by visiting chuckbergman.com or call 904-291-1196.
What does freedom of speech mean to me? It means I can build a mosque and worship there.
It means I don't have to stay silent
when I'm wronged.
It means I can fight for the right to marry.
It means I can write about how I feel about my elected officials, good or bad.
It means I can spread the gospel of Christ.
It means my voice.
My voice?
My voice.
My voice.
My voice.
My voice. It means my voice
is free.
This message is brought to you by the NAB Education Foundation, the Broadcast Education Association, McCormick Foundation, and this station.
I'm sad alone in a boggy marsh, totally motionless except for her heart. Mud flowed up into Lump's pajamas. She totally confused all the passing piranhas. She's lump, she's in my head. She's lump, she might be dead. Lump lingered last in line for brains, and the
most controversial planet in the solar system. You are listening to Earth. Now back to the show. Here's Dr. Drake and Dr. Truth.
Jim Mars is our guest for this first hour tonight, folks. 855-711-8255, and we'll get your calls lined up if you have any questions for Jim Mars in this first hour. Second hour is open lines, 855-711-8255. Real quick reminder, Tony, our webmaster, has done a great job with our the show's brand new website, earthradionetwork.com. And once again, if you go to earthradionetwork.com and click on Earth Live, you can see us live in studio from 3 different cameras. Next week, eventually 4 different cameras, but we're working out. We want to make sure all the bugs are worked out before we launch everything. But next week, free audio archives will be available, and of course, Earth Live. You can subscribe to Earth Live and check all that out. Tons of bells and whistles there. Jim, I have to ask you this question. We have you on, and I've been wanting to ask you this question more than anybody else because, no one else has really been out there. Tons of people have been out there, including ourselves, but you have written a great book, The Terra Conspiracy, and you have a revised version of it. These 28 pages. Ron Paul talked about it, wink, wink, nod, nod, in a number of interviews. Walter Jones and then 4 other congressmen have put this bill out to get these 28 pages that were redacted from the 9/11 Commission out. These 28 pages, in my opinion, Jim, vindicate you, myself, and everyone else out there who are labeled conspiracy theorists who are going around trying to say that 9/11 was an inside job. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, we do not know the particulars because all that's been classified and kept from the public. But we generally know what's in the 28 pages, which is the documentation of the involvement of the Saudis in 9/11. But, that's no secret. We all know that 15 of the 19 named hijackers were not Afghans and they were not Iraqis. They were Saudis, okay? And we know that Osama bin Laden was a Saudi. We also know, or should know, that Osama bin Laden was our creation, He came to the United States back in the 80s, and we armed him and we set him all up, and we sent him to Afghanistan to fight our proxy battle against the Russian occupation forces there. And, of course, it was the old Muslim Brotherhood, which, if you'll read my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, you'll find had been a Nazi-dominated organization since the 1930s. In fact, when we were fighting in North Africa during World War II, we had about as much trouble with some of these Arabs within the Muslim Brotherhood as we did with the Nazis. And then after the war, they were turned over and captured by the British. And then when Britain was forced to pull out of the Middle East, after the Egyptian president sank ships in the Suez Canal in the early 50s, they were picked up by the CIA. And we've been using Al-Qaeda ever since. During the battle in the Balkans, Al-Qaeda was fighting for our side there, and we were allowing them to ship their drugs into Europe in exchange for fighting in Kosovo for our factions. And so it doesn't take any great brain to figure out that when Osama bin Laden was sent to fight in Afghanistan, the name, too many people knew about the Muslim Brotherhood, so they changed the name to Al-Qaeda, or the base. Okay, but it was our guys, and now we've got ISIS, and ISIS is created by us. This goes back to September of 2013 when President Obama announced that he was abrogating the U.S. law that stated you cannot sell arms to known terrorist groups, and he said for the very reason that he wanted to arm the insurgents in Syria. Okay, well, that turned out to be ISIS. So we've created them too. And then, in fact, if you'll go back and really look at the whole thing, you'll find that every single major terrorist event or non-event that we've had since 9/11 has always involved an undercover agent of the FBI or the CIA. This is all just self-generated. We're creating all this.
Well,
and they've done it. They've done it so they could savage the Constitution and strip us of our freedoms.
And they've done a pretty good job at that.
That's right.
The CIA asset known as Tim Osman, most people don't
That's
realize.
right. That was the name they used to bring Osama bin Laden into this country.
Osama bin Laden is Tim Osman.
I even interviewed an FBI official who was at that meeting and met him.
Wow.
So, I mean, this isn't just some wild conspiracy theory. This is all historic fact.
Well, what's interesting is Seymour Hersh, who's more of a mainstream reporter, was pushing the Saudi Arabian connection from the beginning, or at least asking questions about it, and he was marginalized, and so he's going to be vindicated when this information is finally released. I have no doubt.
Now, do you realize why they have so desperately tried to keep Saudi Arabia out of the 9/11 mix?
The Bush connection?
The Bush connection. The Bush family were the closest business and social friends to the Saudi royals, okay? In fact, in the summer of 2000, a year before 9/11, the Bush family went to Saudi Arabia as their guest, It's all very cozy, and it's all about money, okay?
You mean like the Carlyle Group type money? The Saudi bin Laden Group? The largest weapons defense contractor, one of the
who put
largest
George W. Bush into the oil business, Arbusto Energy out of Houston? The money from Salim bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's older brother.
Right.
That's how tight they were.
And I heard the primary investor is like Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum from Dubai, and he is the brother-in-law of Osama bin Laden. So he's the primary investor. And, of course, in 1988, the Wall Street Journal called for them to stop vacationing together, the Bushes and the bin Ladens. That was back in 88.
Yeah, exactly. But see, the so-called media won't tell you these things, or they gloss over it. It's really incredible. Another thing, I'm sure everybody's still fresh on everybody's mind, all this hoorah from Ferguson, Missouri, over the shooting death of Michael Brown, okay? And, the nation was upset. And, even Obama says, blah, blah, and Reverend Sharpton, and it's a huge thing. Hey, about that same time in Salt Lake City, there's a white guy that got killed by police, and it was even under shakier circumstances. And there wasn't any report on that. In fact, there was demonstrations against this thing because in Salt Lake City, this guy and his brother and his cousin, I think, were at a place, and the police came up and told him to stop, and he was wearing headphones, and he didn't hear him, and he kept walking. The cops shot him down, okay? And so there was even less argument about it than the thing in Ferguson. And then, sure enough, the local people got very upset, and there were some demonstrations that were conducted not quietly, but effectively and in good form. And the police chief, instead of sending armed, helmeted, jackbooted cops out to break them up, he sent just officers in uniforms. They talked with the people, and they said, we'll look into this. And you never heard anything about the Salt Lake City thing. So doesn't that show you that there is some kind of agenda going on?
We've talked about it many times, Jim, that there's this push for racial divisiveness in this country is one, another facet of control for the globalists and the domestic side of the globalist agenda.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, they have to keep us divided and conquered. And the way they do that is they keep us fighting with each other over all these social issues like same-sex marriage and stem cell research and all this stuff that everybody can choose sides and we'll all just really fight it out, And then, but yeah, if you stop and think, where's the conflicts? Where's the heated passions over corporate malfeasance and predatory banking laws and corporate misconduct? Or better yet, foreign policy. We all know that we're losing our precious young men and women, whole generations, to all this fighting that's going on, and yet why? For what? In fact, now that you think about it, I guess it all goes back to 9/11, doesn't it?
It's the excuse they use for everything that they want to ramrod down our throat.
Exactly. So once you understand 9/11 was an inside job, then it all falls apart. And that's why they can't allow it to come out.
You know what, Jim? I had a number of listeners, when we started talking about 28 pages a number of months ago, they said, "Well, what do you mean inside job? It was if it says Israel, if it says Saudi Arabia, then how's it an inside job?" And I'm like, "Will you look a little bit further, please? Okay, if you realize the fact that it's just like with the Kennedy assassination, the mafia didn't have the power. Al Qaeda, Saudi Arabia doesn't have the power to tell NORAD to stand down."
Exactly.
Exactly. Who has
I'll
the
give
power?
you one better than that. The Pentagon is the most protected building in the world, okay? And I was in the Army. I was in military intelligence. I know some of this stuff, okay? The Pentagon is ringed with automated anti-aircraft batteries, missile batteries. If you try to fly into the Pentagon or anywhere near it in their restricted airspace, and you're not sending out a friendly transponder signal, these batteries just automatically open on you, shoot you down. But hey, on 9/11, none of them went off.
Well, they also had to fly over the Air Force Base to get to the Pentagon, if you believe the official story. That Hanya Hanzi, a guy who couldn't fly a single-engine Cessna at Sorby's Flying Club, that his flight instructor said he was like Dumb and Dumber.
That's right, couldn't even fly a Cessna.
Right, so somehow pulled off a 270-degree, 8,000-foot descending corkscrew turn to hit the Pentagon right in the budget analyst office where they were looking for the missing $2.3 trillion. Donald Rumsfeld announced was missing the day before. And, of course, he continued with his daily schedule. On 9/11, his daily schedule meeting, it didn't change his schedule at all. He continued to have his normally scheduled meetings.
Business as usual. Same thing in the Kennedy assassination. At the very time that the new president, Lyndon Johnson, is telling everyone who would listen that he feared this was a communist plot, it might have been the start of World War III, and yet not once but twice he ran off and left the military officer with the nuclear launch codes behind. Obviously, he wasn't too concerned about a nuclear war, or he would have kept that guy right at his fingerprints. But hey, never mind what I think, never mind what you guys say about 9/11. Let's listen to what John Farmer says. Who's John Farmer? Well, he's a former Attorney General of New Jersey who happens to have been the senior counsel, in other words, the chief lawyer, to the official Bush-appointed 9/11 Commission. And in 2011, he published a book called The Ground Truth. And here's what he says. In the course of our investigation into the national response to the attacks, the 9/11 Commission staff discovered that the official version of what had occurred that morning, that is, what government and military officials had told Congress, the Commission, the media, and the public about who knew what and when, was almost entirely and inexplicably untrue.
Wow.
And on the very next page, he clarifies it. He says, at some level of the government, at some point in time, there was a decision not to tell the truth about what happened. There you go, folks. Head of 9/11 Commission said they didn't tell us the truth. So why is it that me and you guys and everybody else who tries to raise questions about it gets our integrity and our patriotism questioned? When the head of the commission admits they didn't tell us the truth.
Jim, $13 million is a lot of money to most people, but not when you're running for re-election, but it was $3 million at first and then $13 million in total allocated to investigate the death of 3,000 Americans.
Exactly. Now, let me put that in perspective
14 months later.
Let me put that in perspective for you. $13 million to investigate 9/11, the worst attack on Americans since Pearl Harbor, if not before that. Okay, in 2004, the Republican National Committee announced that they had spent $60 million, 4 times more, on the re-election festivities for George W. Bush. So we can spend $60 million for Republican parties, but they can only spend $13 million to find out what happened on 9/11. Doesn't that tell you something?
It shows you where the priorities are. Like I said, it took 14 months for them to even begin investigating because Roger Clemens doing steroids was more important to Congress than 9/11.
That's right.
And
but, it's kind of like, the worst part of being a clone, you've only got yourself to blame. And we've only got ourselves to blame because we get more fired up over a football game or a baseball game or a hockey game than we do over what's actually happening that means things in our national life.
Well, Jim, I think I really get under people's skin sometimes when I say it, but it's just the truth. Unfortunately, people feel patriotic when they go to a football game or baseball game and they stand up and put their hand over their heart during the national anthem, and then, well, they're patriotic, and that's it.
That's right.
But you ask them to look into something that's of dire consequence to their future and their children's future, and ask them, ask questions like, don't you understand that without 9/11, there's no war in Iraq, Afghanistan, there's no TSA, there's no Department of Homeland Security? Don't you understand that your freedoms are being taken away? They don't want to deal with it.
That's true. And, what I would love to do is ask all these super patriotic people, when they stand up and they talk about the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, or the ramparts we watched, do they even know what they're talking about?
Right.
Well, what's all that about?
Well,
it's all about the War of 1812.
Absolutely.
What?
The Battle of
What's
Fort
that? What happened
McHenry.
to that?
Battle of Fort McHenry.
Yeah, Battle of Fort McHenry. See, you guys know it. I know it.
Absolutely.
Thinking, knowledgeable, educated people know it. But think how many people get all upset thinking somebody might be unpatriotic if they try to question what the government's doing, and yet they don't even know what they're talking about when they pledge allegiance.
Of course, America was never built on trust and obedience to government to begin with.
In fact, it was built on the very opposite.
Absolutely. And, we talked about...
This nation was founded by rebels.
Yes. And, we talked about sports, but in defense of sports, it starts off with a level playing field. The rules are clearly articulated and understood by all, and they're equally and clearly enforced. Imagine we could apply that to our court halls and to our halls of justice and to our Congress and to the executive.
Exactly. Unfortunately, though, both in politics and in the field of justice today, we have the best systems that money can buy.
And the best politicians money can buy.
That's right.
Jim Marrs is our guest for this first hour, folks. Short segment on the other side with Jim Marrs. I think we have our listeners trained way too well. They hear a guest on, and usually, Jim, we don't open the phone lines up when we have a guest on until hour number 2. So, folks, we will take a phone call for Jim Marrs. We apologize. 855-711-8255. Short segment on the other side with the one and only Jim Marrs. Really appreciated him joining us tonight. Somewhere deep inside of Black Sheep Studios, you're listening to the one and only. What is this?
This is Earth.
Hi folks, Ronnie McMullen here talking about the gain you receive from Get the Tea. A lot of food out there is not really food, but more like filler. Almost all fillers are GMO nightmares. When foreign fillers filled with toxins enter our body, well, we don't run so well. We are being bombarded with poor air quality, chemical water, and food fillers that abuse our bodies. And we wonder why they're building more hospitals. How about a clean checkup? Life Change Tea helps you fight toxins, fillers, bad air, and water. All you have to do is drink 2 8-ounce glasses of tea a day. Save money by getting healthy. Doctor visits are costly. Healthy exercise and Life Change Tea could be your answer. So order now at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Don't put it off. Call us 928-308-0408. Again, 928-308-0408. And by the way, if you're going to call us, we say good call.
Oh, again? My computer has crashed. I think I'm going to throw this junk in the garbage can.
But wait, if your computer has been acting like a grouch, then call Oscar at G2 Computers at 425-3106. That's G2 Computers. At G2 Computers, you can get a computer starting at $180.
Well, what's that G2 computer number again?
It's 425-3106. It's called G2 Computers. This is Dr. Drake. When I bought my 89 classic Cadillac Eldorado, it was almost in mint condition as far as looks. But soon afterwards, I started having problems. So I took my Caddy to 2 or 3 places and paid over $900, and it still ran bad until my friend told me about Richard's Automotive on Leon Road off of Beach Boulevard. Richard Automotives have specialized in caddies for over 30 years. These guys are factory trained and ASE certified technicians. That's right, Richard Automotives knows everything about caddies, from oil changes to engine rebuilds. And they only use AC Delco authorized parts. So call them to receive your free 10-point diagnostic full engine inspection, including all belts, hoses, brakes, and fluids. So if your caddy is a classic or brand new, don't take it to the place where they charge you 2 arms and a leg. Call Richards Automotive, your Cadillac specialist, at 642-4960. That's 642-4960. Richards Automotives. These guys are good. I love my Cadillac.
Go for a little ride.
Now you can share the topics that drive the discussions of your favorite talk shows with TalkStream Live's topic-driven talk radio.
We gotta talk. Let's take a drive.
List and promote real-time talk radio topics, or post the topics that you want to hear. Hot topics are tweeted and retweeted, and include simple click-to-listen audio links. The future of talk radio is topic-driven talk radio.
That's what I call real drive.
Available now at TalkStreamLive.com.
Now, back to Earth, the most controversial planet in the solar system. Here's Dr. Drake and Dr. Truth.
Jim Marrs has been joining us this first hour, folks. Award-winning investigative journalist, best-selling author many times over, and folks, you've been listening to truly a true hero, okay? Not just a Vietnam veteran. This guy's been fighting for your freedom in many ways for a long time, trying to get the truth out about what's going on. Jim Marrs, we do have you just for this first hour, correct?
Yep, that's right. But if people are holding off calling, if you want me to, I'll try to hang on for another 15 or 20 minutes to answer some questions if that's possible.
Well, it's totally up to you, Jim. You're so gracious to come on with us anytime, and of course we will have you back on hopefully in June when your new book comes out. So that's totally your decision, my friend.
Okay, well, let's go on and try to see if we can answer some questions for people.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Before people call in, I have a question for you. Have you heard of the CIA agent that's in Centara Hospital in Norfolk that confessed that he killed Marilyn Monroe along with 36 other people, and the FBI is supposedly taking him pretty seriously? Do you believe that report? Have you heard that?
I have heard that report, and I hate to be the one to break this to you, but that's been proven to be a fake. The guy that they show the picture of is some British criminal.
Oh, is that right?
Been identified.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, yeah. I see the cuff on him.
It comes. I'm not sure. There is a website called World News Daily, I believe is the name of it. And if you will, it's kind of like the Onion, okay? Except the Onion is pretty open about being a lampoon, you know. And this one, you have to go and read their disclaimer, and it says everything we say is fiction.
So this is not World Net Daily; it's World News Daily. So appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah. And in fact, that's a very, very good distinction. You've got to make that distinction because World Net Daily, my friend, I've got people there that work for that, and that's a very, very reliable website.
Jerome Corsi.
My friend Jerome Corsi.
Jerome Corsi, yes.
Yeah, he writes for them, and he's as solid as they come. No, this is World News Daily.
Okay. Actually, Jim, for a moment you had me. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, I thought the same thing because I've kept up with World Net Daily for a long time, and I find them to have some pretty solid credentials and do some pretty solid investigative journalism.
And that's why I asked you the question. I appreciate the intel there,
Jim. We're inside.
You got to be careful of the internet, guys, because
most definitely
the upside is that anybody and everybody has access to the internet. The downside is that anybody and everybody has access to the internet.
Well, that's very true. And folks, listen, you just heard Jim Marrs right there. People who call people like Jim Marrs and us conspiracy theorists, Jim, if he's just out there to say stuff for the S of it, right? He just would have went with it. Instead, he immediately he's already vetted it, and he immediately corrects it because we're in pursuit of the truth.
Exactly.
Well, appreciate the debunking. Sometimes you have to debunk things that are not legitimate as well.
That's right.
To maintain
That's
that
right.
credibility.
Because let's face it, it's not only do you have the fruitcakes and the nutballs out there that will try to fool you either just for fun, for spite, or for profit, but you've got paid government shills that are out there who are consciously trying to muddy up the water so that nobody knows what's going on. This, for example, as you probably know, I'm considered a fairly expert in the John F. Kennedy assassination, and that's the cover-up. Not that there's a lack of evidence, but because they've thrown so many red herrings and straw men out there.
Jim Marrs joins us, folks. Your chance to talk with Jim Marrs when we come back for the second hour. Get him lined up, folks. He's only joining us for a little bit in the second hour. 855-711-8255. Your questions for Jim Marrs when we come back deep inside our Black Sheep Studios. It's a Saturday night right here on the one and only Earth.
You are listening to Earth. The guys are taking a break, getting ready for hour 2, and I'm sure that if you've been paying attention, you're processing what you have heard so far. Now, as Dr. Drake likes to say, we don't want you to believe us just on what you have heard. Check it out for yourself and make your own decision on whether or not you are hearing the truth. What's really going on? Is this a total departure from what you know is real? Or is it simply enhancing your worldview? That is a question only you can answer. We are simply opening the door to new ideas. Keep in mind that you can call into the show and give us your comments. The number is 855-711-TALK. That's 1-855-711-8255. Jim Marrs is with us tonight, and to know more about his many books and articles, you can go to his website, Jim Marrs, that's JIMMARRS.com. We'll have more with him in a moment, but first, more news from the most controversial planet in the solar system. Last hour, we reported on science fiction becoming reality. Here's another story along those same lines. The U.S. Army is testing a true-to-life ray gun. ARDEC, the Army's Armament Research Development and Engineering Center, is testing handheld ray guns that could be used against enemy electronics in the battlefield. The Burke Pulsar, named after its inventor, fits on top of an M4 rifle and works by converting the energy released by the gun's firing into electrical energy, which could then be used against electronic components. Though not exactly a laser beam or phaser from Star Trek lore, this is the first such energy weapon that could be carried by soldiers sometime in the not-too-distant future. And we all know by now that underneath Yellowstone National Park is a huge reservoir of magma, which is how all its geysers, hot springs, and mud pots get their heat. What hasn't been known until now is how immense that magma chamber really is. Researchers used the seismic tomography technique to produce a complete picture of the volcanic plumbing system underneath Yellowstone, and they made an astonishing discovery. They already knew about the large magma chamber that fed eruptions of the supervolcano, the last happening about 600,000 years ago. But the new study found a second, deeper reservoir 4.5 times larger than the first, with enough magma to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times over. They say that the existence of this second structure doesn't make it any more or less likely that a new eruption at Yellowstone will occur, but the information will help them gain a better understanding of how magma moves from the mantle to the surface. With any luck, it will stay below ground where it belongs for a long time to come. Stay tuned. More with our guest, Jim Marrs, when Hour 2 of Earth starts. Next.
We
stirring up the heat shall be fire.
The opinions provided by the hosts and guests on the radio show Earth do not express or imply the views of this station's management or that of the ownership of this station. In fact, it's just two guys lost in space.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole? You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up. Ironically, this is not far from the truth. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind. Do you want to know what it is? It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave like everyone else. You were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, you have to see it for yourself. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Do you really? Follow me.
That jagged little red pill, the red pill of truth, it's hard to swallow for many people, but if you do decide to swallow that red pill, then the world's scary for a little bit, but then there's something called clarity. And then you can get in the fight. Jim Marrs is our guest tonight, folks. Jim, would you like to go to the phone calls?
If it pleases you, it tickles me to death.
Let's take a trip to Jackson, Mississippi. Dennis, you are on with the one and only Jim Marrs. Welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Howdy.
It's an honor to speak to you, Mr. Marrs.
Well, the honor's all mine.
I had a question for you. Do you know anything about a show called X-Ops that had dealt with Area 51?
Do I? I was one of the producers of that show, and when we turned up with too good stuff, well documented, they canceled it.
Well, that's what I heard, but I heard
true.
on another show that I just happened to be listening to one day, and I had put this down in my notes, so I'd think about asking you if I ever got the chance. But they said that y'all came up with some pretty astounding evidence.
Yep. And I think it was just too truthful for them. They canceled the whole thing, tried to act, they didn't even know who we were, although the Discovery Channel had put up several $100,000 to produce this thing. It's just another example of the tight control that they have over the mass media.
Well, I'll tell you what, real quick, Dennis and Jim, for the listeners out there who don't know exactly what we're talking about right there, let's expound upon that.
Okay. Well, I forget exactly when this was, back in the early 2000s, I guess. And I was working with some producers out on the West Coast, and we came up with what we thought was a really good idea for a reality-type show, which was we put together a collection of investigators experienced in different fields. We had a couple of guys that were into parapsychology and paranormal, and they had a lot of equipment, Gauss meters and radiation equipment and all kinds of stuff. And then we had a couple of remote viewers who'd been trained by the Army. Then we had a psychic, and then we had an Indian shaman with a good track record. And then I was involved in it. And then we had a host, and it was going to be called the X-Ops. And we were going to go out and investigate strange and unusual stories. But instead of like they do on TV all the time going, UFOs, see the shocking truth right here. And then to the show, they'll give you some titillating come-ons. And then by the end of the show, they're going, yeah, but there's really nothing there to it, folks, In fact, I've actually said in production meetings where some of these networks and channels tell us that, this was back in the 90s maybe. It's changing some now, thank God, but back then they'd say, well, we may look at a show about UFOs, but only if you make fun of them, okay? That was the mindset. Well, but our idea was to put this investigative team on something and go look at some topic like the Loch Ness Monster or the Bigfoot or the Roswell UFO crash, and instead of just telling everybody, here's what they say happened, we're really going to investigate it. And we were going to look for scientific evidence. We were going to look for physical evidence. We were going to use these psychics to see what they were getting, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, they thought this was a good idea, and we actually kind of got underway and went to Roswell and spent a lot of time there. And while we were there, the executive for Discovery just suddenly disappeared. And even though while we were getting all kinds of fascinating factual information, and then the channel decided, the executives decided that they didn't know who we were, and it took us months to finally get some of the money that we had put into it back. And they just said, well, this isn't what we want, and they just scrubbed the whole thing. And then they turn around on some of the other channels, Sci-Fi and a few others, doing the same type format, kind of like the Ghost Hunters or something like that. Anyway, it was quite an experience.
Dennis, real quick before I let you go, anything else for Jim Marrs?
That was the main thing. That show that I was listening to, they were talking to Joshua P. Warren.
Joshua Warren. He was one of the scientific guys.
Yeah, and are you under any kind of? He said that they had got copies of the show, and but they weren't allowed to show it. Have they got you under the same kind of restrictions still?
Yeah, pretty much, because since the channel put up the money to produce the show, then they considered theirs. And even though I've got copies of the stuff we got, I could tell you all about it, but I can't show it to anybody because it's their material. They could get me for copyright infringement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I had. I just
all right. Thank you.
Wanted to bring that up, and I appreciate it. You have a good evening.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your interest. I'm sorry you brought up that chapter in my life, though.
Dennis in Jackson, Mississippi, thank you so much for your call. You know what, Jim, as far as when you were mentioning remote viewing, we've had Major Paul Smith, who was one of the original members of the CIA's remote viewing program. You probably know him.
Yeah.
But you and I, Jim, have both done something that a lot of people haven't. We interview remote viewers, but you and I both had our own separate. I've done a remote viewing session, taken a class, and actually had some incredible results that surprised the heck out of me, and you did as well, right?
Yeah, you've practiced it. Yeah, well, I not only have practiced it, But at one point, I even took up teaching it. I remember one time I went to the Battelle Institute in Columbus, Ohio, and was teaching some of those scientists up there how to remote view. It's all very real, but it's not all cut and dried. I mean, in other words, what they found through their experimentation is everyone has the ability to do this, but then that's like saying we all have the ability to play Chopin on the piano. Well, yeah, we do, but, if you're like me, you'll have to take piano lessons and practice for years to get good at it. And it's kind of the same thing with remote viewing, although the very first time that I sat down and tried it, I ended up with a near 100% accuracy on a viewing of the floor plan of a building that had not yet been built.
It's similar to me. We had to pick a number from these manila envelopes, and this one number was picked, this one envelope, and inside of it had a picture. And when we went through the protocols, I drew a mountain range with ice caps on it, and sure enough, when the picture was taken out of the envelope, it was a mountain range with ice caps on it. It floored me.
I know. It really is mind-blowing when you really realize that it can actually work. I went to an office one time to do some training, and it was a rectangular-shaped office, kind of long and narrow. And I just barely got in the door and then sat at this table that was up near the front, and the rest of the office stretched back, and there were some desks. And then there were some potted plants and, typical office environment. And so they started they gave me some envelopes, same thing you were doing. But then like third or fourth envelope I just got a clear impression of this potted plant, and when I opened my eyes, it looked like the one that was down there at the end of this office. And I said, I'm thinking, I'm not any good. I somehow picked up on that. I got it stuck in my mind. I said, let's do this again. And again, I got the exact same impression when I tried to go to the target of this potted plant in the corner of the office. I did that one more time, and finally I said, okay, let's call it quit on this one. I said, I'm no good. I said, all I get is that potted plant down at the end of the office. And the guy that was training me says, well, did you get, is it live or is it fake? I said, no, it's not. It's man-made. It's fake, And so he opened up the envelope. It was the potted plant down at the end of the office, and it was plastic. So actually, it did a lot better than I thought it did.
It scares people. Some people, it scares them to think about this stuff. But when the CIA spent 20 years researching this and doing the whole remote viewing program, obviously there's something to it, right?
Absolutely. In fact, if you want to read the whole history of the thing, going all the way back to biblical times, my book, Psy-Spies, P-S-I, Psy-Spies, S-P-I-E-S, Psy-Spies, stands short for Psychic Spies, the true story of America's psychic warfare program. It's really an astounding story, and I'll tell you this, I don't think I could probably prove this, but I feel very confident in my own mind that it was psychic remote viewing that ended the Cold War, okay? Because the Cold War was built on secrecy. We didn't know what the Russians had. We weren't sure of what their intentions were, and they sure didn't know what we had. They weren't sure of what our intentions were, and it created this dynamic that was known as the Cold War. Well, they were the ones that actually got ahead of us in psychic experimentation. About 1979, there was a book that came out called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, and the authors did a pretty good job of showing that the Soviets were very serious about experimenting with psychic ability. And of course, in the Pentagon, they said we don't believe in that stuff, so they hadn't paid any attention to it. But once they realized the Russians were doing serious experimentations, then the attitude was, well, we don't believe in that stuff, but by golly, if the commies are doing it, we got to do it too. And that's when they began to research seriously into the psychic ability, and much to the chagrin of some of these military people, they found out that it actually worked. So we had our remote viewers that were traveling mentally around the world, into the skies, everywhere else, seeing what was going on. And you can't keep anything a secret, okay? Because there was one remote viewer who was on the West Coast, went to the East Coast, went in a restricted area, got into a filing cabinet, and looked at highly classified files, and was actually able to accurately tell what was in there. Well, of course, that was one of our experiments. Well, the Soviets were doing the same thing. They had psychic soldiers that they called extrasensors, and they were coming over and looking at us and stuff. So basically, I think what happened is that the Russians decided, oh, holy cow, those Americans, they got everything they say they got, plus more, and they're outspending us. And we looked over and realized the Russians weren't quite as tough and menacing as we were told they were, and the secrecy ended and the Cold War collapsed.
Jim, with you mentioning that, just not that I want to stay on remote viewing, we can go elsewhere before we let you go when we come to this break and everything, but Robert Gates was of course director of the CIA. Robert Gates did this and did that. Robert Gates was Secretary of Defense, of course, under Bush and Frank Marshall Davis, or whatever his name is.
President Barack Obama. Or Barry Soetoro. I've actually met Robert Gates, by the way.
But Robert Gates was the one who, when he was head of the CIA, disbanded the remote viewing program, and this is, of course, prior to 9/11. And I asked Paul Smith off the record and on the record. First, I asked him off the record, and he answered me, and then he finally, in one of our interviews, on the record. So that's why I can say it. He basically said, "Well, yeah, I kind of feel that way. Because what I asked Paul Smith was, when Robert Gates disbanded the remote viewing program by the CIA, it's, a couple years before 9/11, and I was asking Paul, well, wouldn't you guys have, your job was to look for threats against the United States. Wouldn't you guys have seen 9/11 coming? And he said resoundingly yes.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind they would have. But then that's the whole reason. I tend to doubt that they disbanded the remote viewing unit strictly because of 9/11. But I do think in general, yes, I agree. But the main thing is that once these higher ups realized that these trained Army remote viewers, these psychics, could look into every dark corner and could see into cabinets. They could see what these guys and what the government and people running the government were actually up to, and I think it scared them to death. They didn't want any of that, okay? So they disbanded the unit, but now the government has not given up on remote viewing. If you ask them, is there a remote viewing unit within the U.S. military, they're going to tell you no, and technically that's true. But what they've done is that a lot of the military-trained remote viewers are now out there. I think Paul Smith is one of these who is training people to do remote viewing. And what they do then is, if let's say you're a member you're an official of the FBI, and you want to know something, and you think the remote viewers might find it out for you, then you contact one of these former guys or even civilians that are practicing remote viewing, and you contract with them to get some remote viewing done, and they then report back to you, give you the information you wanted, and yet you technically can truthfully say that you don't have any remote viewers, working for you, because this is all a contract thing. That's the way that works. Although I've also know that certain specialized military units like the Delta Force and the Army Rangers and stuff, they've always got at least one person around who's been trained in remote viewing, because if you'll think about it, in any kind of conflict situation, it'd always be good to have somebody around who might tell you what's on the other side of the hill.
Well, very, very true. And Paul, just very quickly, I know Paul has that his entire campus there in Tejas, where you live.
Yeah. I will say this, I personally, because I've met almost all of the military-trained remote viewers and got to be pretty close with several of them. Since 9/11, I've had more than one take a look at 9/11, and they report back that, yes, inside job, and that the airplanes crashed in the World Trade Center were under the control of another plane. And you guys obviously know enough about the 9/11 material that you're probably aware that
E4B.
E4B, was sighted over New York and over Washington, and that seems to be the control for the computer captured airliners.
And folks, Jim, just let me tell the listeners, because you bring up the the E4B. If you Google, folks, if you Google CNN 9/11 mystery plane, CNN did a report on it, and it was quickly pulled.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's getting too close to the truth.
That's right. But how do you have a doomsday plane, an E4B, flying over, as Jim was saying, Lower Manhattan as 9/11 was happening, and then over the Pentagon.
Right. Now, for the edification of your audience, in case some people are going, well, what's the E4B and what's that got to do with it? The E4B is known as a flying command center. Okay, they're big, huge airplanes, and they're full of electronic gear, okay, that can send messages all around the world. Their original purpose was that there was always one of these in the air in case there was a first nuclear strike against the ground targets. This thing would be up there and could order retaliation, okay? But they also, because they have all the latest electronic gear, then the idea is they also can electronically capture the onboard computer of a wide-body jet and take over that computer and fly it regardless of the desire of hijackers or even the flight crew. And this is very, very critical to understand about what happened on 9/11. If you want to see the thing dramatized, go Google up the Lone Gunman, that's plural, that was a spinoff of the X-Files by Chris Carter that aired in early March of 2001, months before 9/11. And in that program, you will hear the storyline is that people within the U.S. government were going to use this technology to take over the computer of a commercial airliner and fly it into the World Trade Center under the guise of a military exercise and blame it on Mideastern terrorists to get their budget increased. Now, if that isn't a red flag, I don't know what it is. How could anybody come up with that scenario 6 months before 9/11 that so closely parallels what actually happened that day?
Right. So when President Bush said that it was a failure of imagination that led to 9/11 because nobody could have possibly imagined flying aircraft into buildings, that's doesn't sound consistent with.
No,
even though they had drilled
when he said that, I felt like the little kid in the classroom in the back, jumping up and down, waving his hand, going, "Call me, call me! I know the answer."
Right. Or Truth mentioned, even though they had drilled for it, like the operation, what is it, Able Danger?
Yes, Able Danger. Google Able Danger, and you'll find out that there were people working on anti-terrorism who were coming up with the inside information of what was coming up. It was known in advance. And let's not forget about all the short selling that went on Wall Street in the day or two before 9/11.
The put options.
Put options, particularly on American Airlines and United. Okay, come on. Somebody profited on foreknowledge.
Yeah, and that was according to the Chicago Securities Exchange. 12 days before, it was a week before. There was... And of course, the CIA director, George Tenet, was former director of Deutsche Bank that owned American and United Airlines.
Buzzy Krongard was
Krongard was the guy involved, yeah. And, of course, right after 9/11, this actually made the mainstream media, and they blipped a little bit, and they were saying, yes, we're going to look to see if people connected to Osama bin Laden weren't in on this foreknowledge, and then all of a sudden it just went dead. You never heard any more about it because it actually tracked back to the CIA.
Jim, we're inside of a minute, my man. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry I've got to run.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
JimMars.com, right? Mars with 2 R's?
That's it.
Folks, you can find all of Jim Mars' books, his works, at Jim Mars, that's Mars with 2 R's.com. And any brick and mortar store, Amazon.com, you can get any of his books. Jim Mars, thank you so much. I'll be in touch. Let's get you on in June or July.
That's the deal. Thank you, guys. Good night.
All right.
That is the great Jim Mars right there, folks. All right? Big time right there. Big time. Always an honor to have Jim Mars on, folks. On the other side of this here coming break, we'll open up the phone lines once again. Toll free 855-711-8255. Whatever's on your mind, it's open lines. I'm riding shotgun with who tonight? A Mehmet Avenger. This is Earth. Hello, Earth fans. It's finally here. On Friday, April 17th, the new EarthRadioNetwork.com website will be launched. There you can find free audio archives, videos, interviews, and photos, and much, much more. But the superstar is Earth Live. Click on Earth Live and sample the Earth Live experience. Become an Earth Live subscriber and watch the show live in studio or from the archives. The new EarthRadioNetwork.com. The launch date is on Friday, April 17th.
Hi folks, Ronnie McMullen here talking about the gain you receive from Get the Tea. A lot of food out there is not really food, but more like filler. Almost all fillers are GMO nightmares. When foreign fillers filled with toxins enter our body, well, we don't run so well. We are being bombarded with poor air quality, chemical water, and food fillers that abuse our bodies. And we wonder why they're building more hospitals. How about a clean checkup? Life Change Tea helps you fight toxins, fillers, bad air, and water. All you have to do is drink 2 8-ounce glasses of tea a day. Save money by getting healthy. Doctor visits are costly. Healthy exercise and Life Change Tea could be your answer. So order now at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Don't put it off. Call us 928-308-0408. Again, 928-308-0408. And by the way, if you're going to call us, we say good call.
Chuck Bergman, psychic medium, will amaze you.
My dad passed away 3 years ago in September.
So it's funny how sometimes they never know what they're going to talk about. Did you ever have to have a car crushed? Does that make sense?
That was his job. He would crush the cars.
Say what now?
He would crush cars.
So, Matt, he really crushed cars for a living?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
If you have ever wanted to communicate with a loved one who has passed on, call on North Florida's best medium, Chuck Bergman.
Did he leave behind a sister?
It's his older sister that pretty much raised him like his
Sure,
son.
that would work. Okay, because he visits with her a lot. I don't know if she's aware of that or not. And now we got to give a quick message to Mom. Who's got the February birthday?
My mom.
Okay, that's a happy birthday to her. Also, a happy Valentine's Day coming up. He still loves her. Boy, he was like circling February over and over and over.
Book your private reading by visiting chuckbergman.com or call 904-291-1196.
Look for a little ride.
Now you can share the topics that drive the discussions of your favorite talk shows with TalkStream Live's topic-driven talk radio.
We gotta talk. Let's take a drive.
List and promote real-time talk radio topics, or post the topics that you want to hear. Hot topics are tweeted and retweeted, and include simple click-to-listen audio links. The future of talk radio is topic-driven talk radio.
Now that's what I call real drive.
Available now at TalkStreamLive.com.
Now, relax and watch.
Nothing seems to kill me. No matter how hard I try, nothing's closing my eyes. Nothing
accused of telling the truth and has been found guilty. Now back to Earth with your hosts, Dr. Drake and Dr. Truth.
The good Dr. Drake rejoins us tomorrow. No, it would be next Saturday night, wouldn't it,
Yes.
Chad? Wow, keep me on track here. Good Dr. Drake rejoins us next Saturday night, folks, and EarthRadioNetwork.com, our show's brand new website. Once again tonight, we have the Earth Live Jazz free flowing for everybody. If you want to watch us in studio next Saturday night, we will. As far as the website goes, EarthRadioNetwork.com, we'll have a bunch of free audio archives that you can pick and choose from right there for you. And Earth Live will be fully operational with a lot of bells and whistles. Mehmet Avenger and I, we are going to go out and do man on the street stuff and film some interviews, and those will be available for Earth Live subscribers along with are you calling it a blog or what are you calling it?
Well, it's AA research right now. Or actually AAA research, Mehmet Avenger Academic. So we're going to call it AAA research. So we got the Bob Oster Report, AAA research, and our man on the street, I like to call that boots on the ground. So
sure.
Boots on the ground.
And some sit-down interviews.
Absolutely.
All available, and as we think of more stuff, we'll just continue adding more and more for the Earth Live subscribers. Not just being able to watch us live in studio, or if you miss a show as a subscriber, go and watch us from the archives. You get all this stuff that we're talking about, and we're just going to continue adding more and more.
And I have PowerPoint presentations and training materials for people who desire to then go out and teach these things to others.
And we've gotten some good feedback that as far as the webcast on Earth Live is running very much more smoothly than last Saturday night, right? So we're I think we're just about ready to do it next Saturday night.
Definitely.
Looking good. Toll free 855-711-8255. Any questions or comments, you can change the subject. Whatever is on your mind, you can even disagree with us. We love it when people disagree with us. It becomes more and more a rarity, I think, as more and more people research stuff. It used to happen to Drake and I on a regular basis. You know, I've said before, I could say 9/11 was an inside job, and the phone lines just light up with people wanting to know where I live.
They try to pass a law up in Florida. Actually, they talked about it, that if you put something up on a website and you have some type of alias like Mehmet Avenger, that you had to not only put who you were, but also put your address. And why? So people who disagree with you can come visit you. So this is something that was proposed in the state of Florida. I don't think it got too much traction, but just the fact that they proposed it is it lit up a lot of.
That's always the scary stuff, isn't it? You know, and I'm glad Jim Mars brought up Jade Helm, and we didn't trek too far into it, but I'm glad he brought it up because it is basically it's already underway, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's 10. There are 10 states involved. It was 8, and they originally expanded to 10 states. So all these things have happened before, but the scale is huge, and it's been said that it's really a psychological warfare operation against the military first, to train them to hear people say, "I'm American, I have rights," and desensitize them to that, and then as a psychological warfare operation against the American people second, to acclimate them to seeing troops on the streets and being desensitized to that.
This just it's just the way I go. I can be a little schizophrenic on radio here and there. Comes to mind, we get attacked all the time about our stance, our anti-vaccine stance, because of course, the measles outbreak, nobody's died from the measles outbreak, right?
I've actually read the insert to the measles, to the MMR vaccine, and it actually says studies on the carcinogenic effects on children have not been done. Why would it cause cancer if it's just So very, very interesting that it says no studies have been done. We don't know.
What was coming to my mind real quick was AA was these people who are, they are hardcore. Like I said before, if you're anti-vaccine, and they are all about vaccinations, and if you do a radio show and you you're anti-vaccine, well, then you're responsible for something like the measles outbreak, which is absurd. But people like this think absurdly, or maybe obtusely, because those same people are the people who would welcome, in my opinion, and listen, they would welcome people getting abortions. Fine, get an abortion, but if you don't take your vaccines, then you're killing people.
Right.
It's such a crazy disconnect with me.
And I've seen this on Law and Order and other shows that were propaganda for this pushing the vaccine agenda. Of course, I'm a vaccination person, kind of vaccination freedom kind of person. And when I say vaccination freedom, in other words, if you believe that the benefits outweigh the costs, then go for it. But don't force others into compliance to your will through coercion of law. And so for those folks who say, no, we don't want that, but the whole argument of if you don't get vaccinated, you're putting others who do get vaccinated at risk it doesn't make any sense, because why then did they take the vaccine? You're admitting the vaccine doesn't work. And I've actually challenged nurses and doctors who have said that, and then they got very frustrated and upset with me because they didn't have the answer for the phrase, if you don't get vaccinated, you're putting others who have at risk. What's the purpose of a vaccination? So again, vaccination freedom. Allow people, if they believe the benefits outweigh the costs, to take it, but don't ramrod it down other people's throats.
And I'll have to do this
because
otherwise.
They're not going to go away anytime soon. Go ahead.
No, not at all. No, and you make a great point. But I'll have to do this otherwise. I'll get 40 million, exaggeration, but a hell of a lot of emails saying, so let me just clarify everything real quick. When I brought up abortion, okay? Listen, I personally think it's a bad choice, okay? I personally am against abortion, but I also am about your right to choose, okay? That's between you and your God if you have one, okay? That's your choice. I don't think that, just like I don't think the U.S. government or people in general should be able to force me to take vaccinations. I don't think the government or other people should be able to tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her body. Like I said, it's between her and her God if she has one. Just my opinion.
And actually, if you want to legitimately deal with those issues, you have rape, incest, and you have other issues and other complicated trials and scenarios, it's a state issue. Because if you consider abortion to be murder, then murder is a state crime. And it's tried differently in every state. It's not a federal issue. It's a state issue.
Sentinel,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I hear Sentinel brewing. He has something brewing in his mind.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this, and it's kind of a game I want to play here called What Are They Hiding? Okay,
all right.
You think of the Capitol building, and there is a basement to the Capitol building. You can go down in there, and there's a certain room. You cannot go in this room. Normal people cannot go in this room. You are, let's say, you are a U.S. Senator. You have access to this room. You can go down here and review certain documents. But when you do, you cannot bring any of your staffers. You cannot take notes. You cannot take pictures. You are accompanied by a security guard at all times. And while you're reviewing these documents, he is present with you until you are finished. And when you are finished, you, like I said, you can't take notes or anything. You just leave. And basically, you have to commit everything to memory. So what document do you think this is that's being held down in the basement of the Senate at this time?
Uh-huh.
I know that 28 pages redacted from the 9/11 Commission are down there.
Okay, that's one of them. Do you know of any others?
And
see JFK?
Well, a little bit more recent.
How about TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership?
Yes. The text of the Trans-Pacific Partnership is down there. You can, if you are a senator, you can go down there and review it if you would like, but you cannot take notes. You cannot take people with you. There is a security guard with you at all times while you review these documents. You have to commit as much as you can to memory, and then you leave. And that is what they are hiding. Now, if TPP is such a good thing for for America, for the workers of America, for the consumers, why are they keeping this secret? Obama has been saying how good this is for the country. There are a lot of other senators that are on board with this in the government that are saying the exact same thing. You're hearing in the media now. They're picking up the same tune that they're putting out, that this is a good thing because it's going to establish all these rules. Well, who's writing the rules? It's not us.
It's corporate lobbyists in secret.
Corporate lobbyists are writing these things. Obama has said that, well, if we don't do this, the Chinese will. Well, they absolutely are. They are the ones that are in cahoots. And basically, we are being left out of the cold. And the only way that we can get this stopped is if we put pressure on our elected officials, especially our senators, to say, do not fast track the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because if it gets fast-tracked, there's no debate. It just basically is going to go straight to the for approval, and we need to know what is in it.
Very well said. As your phone calls come in, folks, we're going to line them up, and I'm going to continue with what the Sentinel was bringing up right there, because this is AA. When you look at this particular bill right here, trying to get this passed, all it's going to do is do what? It's going to give the mega multinational corporations more and more power.
Absolutely. It's going to take the rule of law and put it under corporate fiction, is what it's going to do, and make it an international corporate agreement.
But this is the whole globalism, the New World Order jazz that we talk about on a regular basis. And It's right in front of the American people's face.
Right.
And I'm so glad that the Sentinel has been bringing this up the past couple Saturday nights.
Yeah, I appreciate that he's following it.
Contact your senator, and also contact all senators. There is a special number that you can call, the Senate switchboard. I'll see if I can call up that number so we can distribute it out, and call all the senators, if you have time, call their offices and tell them to not fast track the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Absolutely. Definitely appreciate that.
Let's take a trip to Florida, somewhere in Florida. Jeanette, welcome. You're on Earth.
Hi, good evening, guys. I wanted to ask Amendment Avenger, how is it that you get your children into school? Because they say that if you don't vaccinate your child, you can't admit them to school.
That's a great question, Jeanette. The Florida State Supreme Court, at least in Florida, it's different in every state, says that, and actually it's not just the Supreme Court said, there's a state statute. It's called 3232.032, which is really easy to remember. Again, state statute 3232.032 says that if you want to be exempt from having to have your children vaccinated, the first thing it does is, the whole purpose of the statute is to give the Department of Health for the state of Florida responsibility for the dissemination and the promulgation of the vaccination. So that's what it really does. But there is an exemption. There is a form at the end of this legislation that is an opt-out for religious purposes. And in 2006, a father of an 8-year-old girl opted out for religious purposes of his daughter, and then the Department of Health immediately began investigating his religious beliefs as to whether or not they were bona fide. Well, that went all the way to the Florida Supreme Court, and the Florida Supreme Court said accurately and properly, they didn't change the law, they didn't throw it out, they didn't keep it because of judicial activism, they interpreted what was written. And they said, this is what the law says, this is what the law means. And what the law says is that if you fill out the form, you're exempt. They said that the Florida Department of Health exceeded their jurisdictional authority to investigate whether or not somebody's religious beliefs are even bona fide or not. So the way the law is written, so the way the law is written is, go ahead.
Where do you get those forms? In the school?
You can get it online at Florida State Statute 3232.032. That's a great question, and we should make that available. I will make that available on the Earth website, so that you can open and read the legislation, and on the last page of legislation is that form. And the way the law is written, and the Supreme Court upheld this in 2006, is that if you fill out the form, you're exempt. And you could be lying about your religious beliefs, but the way the law is written is you fill out the form, you're exempt, whether or not your religious beliefs are bona fide or not, because the Department of Health does not have the authority. They've been shot down by the Supreme Court. So that's the good news in Florida. And if you know that, then that's good. But a lot of people at the schools will tell you, if you're trying to check in your kids, you got to do it. It's the law. And it's not. They don't know what they're talking about. They just know what they're told. And it's really, it's the school's policy. The policy does say that after 21 days of an outbreak, you have to keep your kids away from the school for 21 days after there's an outbreak. But if you're a parent and your children haven't been vaccinated and there's an outbreak period, do you really have to be told to remove your child from the school for that amount of time? So that's the beef of that law, and I'll make that available on Earth.
Right, and where would you recommend that people start to investigate if they live in a different state? Who do you recommend that they would call?
That's a
Their
great
health department.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
you.
That's the place to go.
Jeanette, thank you so much for your call, folks. Toll free 855-711-8255 is the number. Great call from Jeanette. And when we come back, well, I'll tell you what. The Sentinel has posted this right now. The switchboard for the U.S. Capitol is area code 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121 if you want to let them know about your feelings about the Trans-Pacific Partnership somewhere in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Earth.
Hello, this is Ty Bollinger, author of the best-selling book, Cancer, Step Outside the Box. I want you to know some very important information. In 1985, President Ronald Reagan requested that Carnivora be sent directly to the White House at a time when only the president could obtain this world-class healer. Now, 27 years later, Carnivora capsules are used around the world to keep people healthy. Now you can protect yourself and your loved ones in this age of superbugs with 17 naturally occurring compounds that instinctively respond to abnormal cells only without harming a single normal cell. If you want to stay healthy, now's your chance to literally wake up your critical immune cells to attack harmful invaders that don't belong in your body. Call 1-866-VENUS-FLY or order from Carnivora.com. That's Carnivora.com. That's 1-866-836-8735, 1-866-VENUS-FLY, or visit Carnivora.com. Protect your immune system. It's the only one you've got.
This is Dr. Drake. When I bought my 89 classic Cadillac Eldorado, it was almost in mint condition as far as looks. But soon afterwards, I started having problems. So I took my Caddy to 2 or 3 places and paid over $900, and it still ran bad until my friend told me about Richard's Automotive on Leon Road off of Beach Boulevard. Richard Automotives have specialized in caddies for over 30 years. These guys are factory trained and ASE certified technicians. That's right, Richard Automotives knows everything about caddies, from oil changes to engine rebuilds, and they only use AC Delco authorized parts. So call them to receive your free 10-point diagnostic full engine inspection, including all belts, hoses, brakes, and fluids. So if your Caddy is a classic or brand new, don't take it to the place where they charge you 2 arms and a leg. Call Richards Automotive, your Cadillac specialist, at 642-4960. That's 642-4960. Richards Automotives. These guys are good. I love my Cadillac.
Are you tired of getting hit in the head or told to roll over because of your loud, annoying snoring? And you don't want to revert to a CPAP machine strapped to your face? Well, why not try a custom-made snore guard by Somnomed? Your risk for stroke and heart attack will be reduced by 30%. Hi, this is Dr. James McCall, and I wear a Somnomed snore guard, and I'm sleeping better than ever, and my wife couldn't be happier. Call me at 620-9225 and see if you're a candidate for a custom-made snore guard, which is covered by most health insurance plans. Give me a call at 620-9225.
Oh, again? My computer has crashed. I think I'm gonna throw this junk in the garbage can.
But wait, if your computer has been acting like a grouch, then call Oscar at G2 Computers at 425-3106. That's G2 Computers. At G2 Computers, you can get a computer starting at $180.
Well, what's that G2 computer number again?
It's 425-3106. It's called G2 Computers.
The most controversial planet in the solar system. You are listening to Earth.
Great pick right there by the greatest producer in the world, the Sentinel.
Hey, since you brought up my name here, I just want to get that number out one more time. 202-224-3121. That is the U.S. Capitol switchboard. Call your senator. And even better yet, call the senators that are running for president, Marco Rubio and Rand Paul, and tell them that we are watching you and we will not vote for you. We will not support you until you are on record saying that you vote against fast tracking the TPP. It doesn't mean that they have to kill it, but put it into get it off a fast track so we can have a debate on it.
Right. Absolutely.
No, I totally agree, Sentinel. And when you brought up the little quiz right there, and I guessed 28 pages and all this, I just want to throw this in because we brought it up with Jim Mars. Walter Jones, who was the person who sponsored the bill to release the 28 pages that were redacted from the 9/11 Commission report. Walter Jones, and let's see, to quote him when he was down there reading it. Of course, as the Sentinel was saying, you can't take notes, nothing. You're guarded and all this. You have to. He said in an interview, and he can't say exactly everything that was in it, but he said in an interview, I had to stop every 2 or 3 pages and take a deep breath and rearrange history in my mind.
Wow!
It was deeply, deeply disturbing, and the American people need to know the truth. So. I mean, use that switchboard for a lot of things, but definitely the TPP, which is a lot easier to say than the Trans-Pacific Partnership sometimes, that needs to be on the tips of everyone's mind right now if you're an American.
And there's another one called TTIP. So it's sort of a branch of the same type of legislation that's going down, or corporate, backdoor corporate agreement that they want to make in the legislation.
Actually, I've heard a more accurate description for the TPP. It's the Southern Hemispheric Asian Free Trade Agreement, or SHAFTA.
SHAFTA, okay. Because you got NAFTA and CAFTA, now we have SHAFTA.
You got the big SHAFTA delivered to you. I totally agree. And folks, coming up in May 2nd is next Saturday. Jeez Louise.
Yes.
As the we could do our own soap opera as the year flies, but starting in May, folks, it's just more and more great guests, and of course continue to visit our brand new EarthRadioNetwork.com website. Especially next week, you can check out a lot more stuff as we have cleared out a lot of the bugs, and we'll continue adding more stuff. We didn't want to add everything until we cleared out a lot of bugs, and Tony's been doing a great job making sure that happens.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Appreciate you.
And the good Dr. Drake rejoins us from his uphill skiing championship that he defends every once in a while in Juarez, Mexico. I don't know how he does all of it together. It's amazing. The guy is he's subhuman.
Yeah, wrestling polar
maybe he's
bears
above
too.
human.
Yeah.
That's. And once again, we want to thank Jim Mars. Folks, go to jimmars.com. That's Mars with 2 R's. Check out jimmars.com and look at everything that he's about. Jim Mars, definitely a great hero.
Thanks for listening. And remember, freedom is always your first best destiny.
Give Drake some Maranathas.
Maranatha, Maranatha, keep shining.
For our elusive engineer, and of course the greatest producer in the world, the Sentinel, our great webmaster, Tony. And, of course, contributors, one is in here, and the departed Bob Chapman. We always love you, Bob Chapman. We're doing a salute to you later on this summer. And, of course, Bob Austin, folks. Until next time, let justice be done, though the heavens fall. I'm Truth. This is Earth.
And we close with good night, good luck, and God bless all of you on the good earth.